Good evening, Dr. Kenyon. I hope all is well. I hope you're doing good. My name's Jeremiah Zingali. You've seen me in all your classes. We've talked via email. Again, I hope you're doing well. This is my podcast for our final project, defunding the police, and subsequently the militarization of police. I've tried to do this a lot of times now. Tried many times to record this. I've always been interested in podcasting, and I've found that this is a difficult thing to do. This is a very difficult art form to begin, because you feel like at first you imagine that it's just talking. It's not just talking. It's kind of difficult. I don't know. Anyhow, defunding the police. I think that's a very interesting phrase. When I first heard it back in June, starting to circulate media sources, I thought that it was one of the stupidest things I'd ever heard. I'm politically independent, definitely left-leaning, but fiscally like right-leaning. And I just thought that defunding the police was stupid. I was like, why would you want to get rid of the police? Because the police, we need them to keep us safe. However, over time, I realized that high police spending is incredibly counterintuitive to the longevity of a society. The reason I say that is because high police spending is generally taking funds away from preventative measures such as education, mental health programs, and the foster system, and pouring it into a reactionary source. The police react to crime, and they react to negative things happening in the community. But when you take some of those funds away from the police departments and you start injecting that slowly but surely into all these other social services to help the youth become good citizens, then you no longer are going to need high police spending, military-grade weapons to keep the order. For example, I was looking for some statistics, and Radio OSU had an article written by Nick Evans where he outlined some very interesting statistics. He said that the city of Columbus, in their budget expenditure report, reportedly is going to spend approximately 1/3 of total funds available to the city of Columbus on their police force. Additionally, they set aside $9 million for maintenance and gas for police vehicles, which is about $1.5 million more dollars than the affordable housing program is receiving in Columbus. So they're not only taking 1/3 of total funds for this police department, but in that budget, they have $9 million set aside for maintenance and gas alone on police vehicles, which is $9 million more than the total available funds for affordable housing. Let me continue. In the police budget, they have set aside $500,000 for ammunition. They've set aside $4.5 million for police uniforms and armor, whereas they only have $1.5 million going into Collaborate One, which is a program designed for African American moms to help increase the birth rate. Because right now in Columbus, there is a high death rate amongst African American babies. So Celebrate One, this program designed to help African American mothers raise their children, raise healthy children, is receiving $1.5 million, whereas in this police budget, they have got $9 million, like I said, set aside for things like maintenance and gas. They've got $500,000 for ammo and $4.5 million for uniforms and armor. Now, to me, that just seems kind of problematic, because you are setting aside all of this money for resources, whereas if you took that money away and started injecting it into other areas of the community, if you started encouraging police programs to build positive relationships with the community, it is very likely that you would not need to have so much money being spent on the police, but more on that later. I believe that the issue here that we're really looking at is the fact that police receive too much funding. I believe that police, through the 1033 federal program, are increasingly militarized, and I don't really believe that that is an effective policing strategy for our country. There was a study done by this student. It was her thesis. Her name is Alma Gonzalez, and she did a study to see whether or not education reduces crime. Now, her studies were not conclusive, as it's very difficult to find completely conclusive results for this. However, her study, which is over 40 pages long, does conclude that there is support for a positive correlation between higher education graduation rates amongst youth and lower crime rates. Now, this study is very interesting to me because I didn't honestly necessarily think that that would be the case. However, it does make sense. If you have more of the general youth graduating high school, they are now becoming equipped for these more than entry-level jobs. They may become inspired to go to college. And it has been shown that there is generally less crime committed by higher educated individuals. Another interesting point is the fact that police spending has continued to increase despite crime steadily decreasing throughout the past 4 decades. In an article published by Bloomberg Businessweek, a study showed that the cost of policing in the U.S. has almost tripled from $42.3 billion in 1977 to $114.5 billion in 2017. This giant increase is coming despite lowering crime rates in the United States. If you look at the graph published with this study, you'll find that the number of violent crimes, for example, in 1992 was 1.9 million in the United States, whereas in 2017, as the police funding has continued to rise, violent crimes dropped down to 1.2 million cases in the United States. I believe that the decrease in violent crime can definitely be attributed to higher education attainment amongst individuals throughout the last 20 or so years. However, even with these dropping crime rates, being cut by almost 1 million cases, the funding for police has grown almost exponentially. You must ask, though, what the economic impact of defunding the police is. What happens when you take money out of these police departments and begin injecting it into other programs? Well, the LA Times wrote an article talking about how right after the George Floyd protests began, the mayor was seeking to cut $150 million from the police department and begin injecting it into other programs that would help the African American community. $100 to $150 million reallocated in job programs, health initiative programs, and other such programs to support the black community in Los Angeles. However, the LA Magazine reported, that as a result of this reallocation of funds, the LAPD was reporting losses of up to 350 people in some departments. That cutting of 350 million people is affecting many different policing jobs, such as animal cruelty task forces and sexual assault units, amongst other things. That is discouraging to hear, because of the losses and the cuts that the department is going to have to face. And I can only imagine how frustrating that is. But I believe that reallocation of funds can set up societal services and encourage programs so that the police do not have to serve in that capacity. I believe that things such as sexual assault cases, animal cruelty cases, domestic violence cases, certain things like that can have separate societal programs being funded to handle that so that the police can focus on maintaining a safe community and building a healthy relationship with the community. Now, politically, defunding the police is very difficult on several different fronts. One front you see is that typically a lot of left-leaning people support defunding the police in a lot of the same ways that I've described in this podcast so far, whereas a lot of right-leaning people, conservatives, don't support that. Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity, for example, on Fox News Network have decried defunding the police, the entire phrase, saying that it's stupid, it's silly, and it will just lead to higher crime. Whereas you could see leftward-leaning people, such as people on the Minneapolis Council, agree with defunding the police. In Minneapolis alone, they actually went so far as to vow to abolish the police, though that has yet to be seen. I believe things like this can open up new avenues for alternative forms of policing, of law enforcement. Personally, I've met a lot of liberal people who are very much for the defund the police movement. I've met a lot of conservative people who think it's stupid and it's going to lead to a loss of law and order in this country. Like I said, I agree with the entire movement. I think that defunding the police, though it might be tough in the short run, ultimately is going to be incredibly helpful in the long run of this country. I believe it's important for young people to be exposed to this idea. I think that it will help them begin to understand the battles between partisans, unfortunately, and kind of prepare for those types of battles going on in their life. I mean, politically, it's very easy to get heated with other people, but I believe that if they start to see these kinds of battles being exhibited in the real world, they can prepare themselves to better debate people when they run into somebody who does not share their beliefs. I believe it's a good way to start introducing economics, introduce how funds are allocated throughout a community. And I believe that young people who are going to inherit and change this world need to understand things like this, need to understand the impact of reallocating funds into different programs, or if you believe that it's a stupid movement, to begin to understand how to use facts to back up what you believe. As far as incorporating this into the classroom, I believe that I could have students spend perhaps a week looking into different sources, helping to provide them with different sources to begin to build their opinion on what they believe. And then I believe in having like a town hall or an open discussion, encouraging healthy behavior and healthy speech and discussion in the classroom so that students can begin engaging in that healthy political debate with one another. That's wrapping up this podcast. I just want to apologize if it sounds at all scrambled or jumbled. This has been a very difficult way to express myself. I could write stuff like this, no problem, but actually talking about it is very difficult, I've found. I hope you enjoyed, though. If there's anything you are unsure about or you want to reach out and talk about more, I would love to have that conversation. You can email me at any point, and I will be happy to have a chat. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day. I'm sorry again for how jumbled it was, but I hope this is doing all right. Have a good night. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.